All right, Terry, you can kick us off with our
Sure.
Encore Learning Prevents event.
Okay. Um, yeah, hello, this is Terry Smith, and welcome back to Encore Learning Presents. We have a nice special presentation of public art in Arlington, present, past, and future, presented by Angela Adams. But first, we have to go over some technical details before we get into the presentation. Um, Okay, use the Q&A function, not chat. Chat is disabled. Questions are visible to the audience. Similar questions may be consolidated. So use the Zoom controls to either um, to display or hide the live transcript. And when you leave the webinar, you will see a survey request. It's brief. Please take it. That's good feedback for Encore. And we have some upcoming events. Upcoming events are like post-COVID-19 world, a new economic order. That's on Monday, November 13th, 3 to 4:30. Dr. Evanson will be presenting. That should be an interesting presentation. And if you're a new member, please join us for the new member coffee on Tuesday, November 14th, from 10:30 to 11:30. You can meet new members, and you can also other members, and you can meet some of the leadership. And that's going to be in um, George Mason, in room 617 of Van Meter Hall. And that is, of course, is going to be in person. So without going up too much further, I'm going to turn it over to Laura. I can find it.
Well, good afternoon. I'm not having my video show up, but I'm Laura Polari Welbus. I'm with Encore Learning, and I'm delighted to be here today to welcome my a friend and a mutual connection that I've made, Angela Anderson Adams, talking today on public art in Arlington, Virginia, present, past, and future. Angela is Arlington's own public art expert, and she's going to share with us today. She'll be talking for about 45 minutes or so, and then take questions. And Angela has worked as a curator and arts administrator for nearly 40 years, with half of that time with Arlington Public Art. She served as adjunct curator at the National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington, D.C., and as exhibitions director and curator for the Arlington Arts Center. Her career includes working directly with notable artists such as Nancy Holt and Pasita Abad. I was really treated recently to a retrospective show of Pasita Abad's work at the Walker Arts Center in Minneapolis, and saw a reference to Angela Adams at that show. So Angela's going to share with us about Arlington's public art and give you some new ideas of places you might want to visit, or recall what you might have visited during one of your many walks over the past few years. She'll present for about 45 minutes and then take your questions. You can put them in the Q&A, and Louise Kenny will join us and moderate those questions. And we hope that this presentation helps you explore deeper the public art that's in Arlington, and pique your interest and contemplate sort of the meaning of that public art. So with that, I hope that Angela will join us on screen.
I hope I'm on screen. You don't see me? I see me.
There you are.
Okay, good. All right. Thanks so much, Laura. Thank you for the invitation to present today to Encore Learning. It's really wonderful to be able to talk about public art publicly, of course. And during the pandemic, we had to all kind of change gears. So this is the first time I've really had a chance to talk about public art in a while. And really delighted to have this new format. And hopefully this is a recording for future questions. So I'll just start hopefully with moving my cursor with a definition of what public art is. Public art means a lot of things to a lot of different people, but we tend to go with this with this general idea that public art is basically to be placed where we put artists in places and spaces where the county is doing its work. At least here in Arlington, that's how we define public art. So where is the county investing our time, energy, and money? And by the county, I mean not just the county government, but also the citizens of the county. So what are we interested in? Where do we want to see improvements and investments? And we tend to then find appropriate artists to match with those opportunities. So people ask sometimes, oh my gosh, public art, where is it? And then of course, how do we decide where it gets there or how it gets there? We tend to follow these guiding principles for public art, and these are just good placemaking principles. So we tend to want to put art where people are, and not just where people go occasionally, but where people will go, a wide variety of people would go for a lot of different reasons over different times of day. And we often in Arlington, and I'll talk a little more about why this is so, but we tend to integrate our public art into architecture, landscape design, and even infrastructural projects. And so there's a 40-year history as to why we do that here. We are paying attention to all the planning that is happening throughout the county. So we contributed to the Plan Langston Boulevard project or plan that's going forward. We've contributed to the historic cultural resources plan that's going forward to the board next month. So these are current plans that we've had some involvement in helping to shape. So we pay attention, like I said, to all the planning that's happening, planning for individual facilities as well, usually charted through the capital improvement program. We have this opportunity in Arlington, which is somewhat unique, that we can pool funds which we collect from developer projects in different areas throughout the county, and then redirect those to county projects that are happening in proximity to where we receive those contributions. We of course direct, we plan a variety of projects that hopefully address Arlington's diverse history, our diversity, and our interest in our environmental and cultural resources. So historic resources often get consideration in our work. And then one of the, I think, most important principles for public art in Arlington is we really only invest where we have adequate partners and funding. And by this, I mean, it's not going to be too hard to make a project happen or too expensive. So if a project is stressed, if a project is underfunded, has to happen on a fast timeline, we tend to not want to have to add another burden to that project. But as most projects happen in Arlington, whether they're private developer projects or county projects, we have this long lead time and a lot of community involvement in the planning. And so because of that, our projects tend to allow for the inclusion of artists, often at the beginning of projects and their planning. So we can jump to the website, but maybe that's something I'll do at the end. But I did want to say that we have a really great interactive website where you can go and see public art throughout the county. And then we have listings in our permanent collection and for past temporary projects where you can see the projects in greater detail. So I encourage you to visit the website, and that's something we can look at the end of the presentation. And then people ask, well, gosh, public art, didn't know it was happening. How long has this been going on here in Arlington? And so the timeline really can be traced back 40 years. 40 years next year. We actually kicked off our 40th anniversary this year because August 1st is a really important date for us. And August 1st is the date every year at 9:32 in the morning, where Dark Star Park, which was designed by the artist Nancy Holt, will create a shadow alignment that happens on the southern portion of the project. And it tends to be an event where we don't have to advertise it. People remember, they come to celebrate Roslyn in this case, because it was the date in 1860 when William Henry Ross purchased the land that became known as Roslyn. So the artist very much intentionally chose that date for the shadow alignment. She chose 9:32 in the morning after much study, and it was just a time of day when she liked the shadow patterns. And it turns out to be a good time of day for people coming out each year to celebrate our Dark Star Park Day. So we encourage you, if you haven't already come, and if you hopefully it's on your calendars, if you know about it, for this coming August the 1st, for our 40th anniversary, we will have a big celebration this year, celebrating the 40th time this has happened. So we went for many years, almost 20 years after working with private developers. This was the Planning Commission at the time, working with planning staff at the time, writing a grant to the National Endowment for the Arts to help fund Dark Star Park. But it took the county another 15 years, 20 years or so to formalize this into a public art policy, which the board adopted 23 years ago. And then we developed a master plan, and our master plan, like all the other plans that we track with, we invite our colleagues to track with us. We recently updated the plan actually it's 2 years next month, which gives guidance to where we direct the efforts of the program. So that plan, I encourage you to look at if you're interested in a deeper dive as to why and where we do public art, guides our work. We also have administrative guidelines which guide our work, and they're very nicely laid out so that they talk about everybody's role, from the county board to the Arts Commission to the Public Art Committee to staff to an individual artist. And then we break it down based on whether it's a county initiated, community initiated, or developer initiated project, which are our three basic types. I'll talk more about those later. And then we kind of important for us, internal to the county. I started working for the county almost 30 years ago, and I was hired as a parks employee as part of the cultural affairs division within parks. And astonishingly, 12 years ago, we moved from, I can't believe it's been 12 years, we moved from parks to economic development. So our whole division came over, and we became a new division within the Department of Economic Development. And that changed a little bit our relationship to our work. Economic development has two major roles in the county. One is to make sure that we have a strong tax base to afford all the things that we as Arlingtonians want to have in our community, and placemaking. And so we fit very nicely in the placemaking initiative for our department. I mentioned we recently updated the master plan a couple years ago. So this is actually a spread from our online master plan. It shows a really great timeline of projects. We have been busy. In essence, we even reached back to 1939, where some wonderful WPA era murals were installed in the Clarendon post office. They are very much of their time, I will say, but that is the first public art that we sort of start to track on this timeline. But for the most part, everything it goes forward from 1984, which is when, as I mentioned, Dark Star Park was dedicated, and we had our first commemorative Dark Star Park Day shadow alignment. So this shows kind of a snapshot of what we've done over the last 40 years, and then some projects that are still moving forward. But We all told have about 80 works of public art in our permanent collection, which is a considered significant collection. We have done over 30 temporary projects, again, as I mentioned, listed on our website under temporary projects. We hope that these, while they may no longer, some of them are up in the public, but while they're no longer maybe there, people remember them, and they form a part of our collective communal memory of our place here in Arlington. We have framed works of art, portable works of art that are largely even either at DHS headquarters, Arlington Economic Development headquarters, or at the county manager county board suite installed. And then people have asked for this number, and so we did the research that, you know, if you sort of added everything up, you know, it's about a $16 million collection. So I mentioned a little bit about types of public art, and I mentioned that we tend to put artists where our resources are here. So public art and civic design is a big category, and it's one where really Nancy Holt and Dark Star Park sent us down this road of thinking about artists as design team members for building new county facilities. And by that, I mean buildings, open space or parks, and infrastructure like bridges. So we tend to, again, invite an artist on a project to provide enhancement to that project. We do a variety of special projects. Artist residencies are probably the easiest thing to point to, although we've done things like create a zine that engaged with the planning that was done for Langston Boulevard, so that people who were curious about Langston Boulevard and maybe would have appreciated to see it in a different lens than the way the planners described it. We had an artist do her research as to what was interesting about Langston Boulevard and present that in an artful way. And that zine is online. We also have physical copies if anyone would like one. But that's an example of a special project. And then a residency, we could basically consider the artist who did the zine an artist in residence, but we have most recently created a project in our affordable housing community, which I'll talk a little bit more later, and we're intending to continue that work as well. Developer projects I mentioned. So, you know, the county has a special exception to our by right zoning. So we can often engage with developers to either plan a work of public art for their project, or they will make a cash contribution in lieu. And as I mentioned, that is pooled and earmarked for a county project in the vicinity of where that contribution came from. We have audience development and engagement projects happening all the time. Most recently for our Bosman Government Center. Anybody who was at the county fair may have seen us there. We had maps, and we were asking people to tell us your favorite route through Arlington to inform the work of Kip Kobayashi, who's developing a suspended sculpture for the entranceway to Bosman Government Center. And that should be installed sometime this time next year. We do special exhibitions. We enable community initiated projects, so people come to us with their ideas for public art. Generally, that's something that they figure out the funding for as well, but we're here to provide technical assistance and guidance with those projects. Site plan review are developer projects, but we also participate in the process writ large. So sometimes that will be for special planning studies or these special area or sector plan updates, but just planning in general. We are a presence working with CPHD, our community planning and housing folks, and then also the Department of Environmental Services, transportation planning. So we are part of the thinking and the planning that happens throughout the county. And that's something we monitor. And then, of course, maintenance. If you have 80 permanent works of public art, you have 80 projects to make sure are continuing to look good. So we have a special emphasis on our maintenance, especially in the last year or two. So what have we done lately? These are projects that we are celebrating having completed this past fiscal year. So the county is on a July 1 to June 30 fiscal year. So these are all projects that were finished by June 30 of this year. So I mentioned that we sometimes engage artists in infrastructure. This is an example of a recent project that was dedicated just last month. And we invited Vicki Scurry, an artist who's based in the Seattle area, who's done other bridge enhancements projects for us. For those of you who may enjoy the projects at the interchange of 10th Street and Courthouse Road, those spans were designed by Vicki. And they have an LED program that changes. So there's these beautiful, colorful displays that happen every night. Thanks to Vicki Scurry working with the bridge engineers and actually VDOT in planning that project years ago. And when we worked on a solicitation for artists for this project, Vicki was again selected. And what's nice is she's working on a companion bridge just a little east of here at Arlington Ridge Road as well. So when that bridge is done, you'll have these beautiful pair of bridges along south, just off of South Glebe Road. So I invite you to take a look. I drive by this every time. I should say every time I drive by this, it catches my eye. It's just, I think, a stunning piece of infrastructure. And we did this jointly with the city of Alexandria. So I mentioned portable works, framed works of art that are, as I said, generally at DHS, Department of Human Services, at Arlington Economic Development's headquarters, and then also in the county manager, county board suite. But we also added some to the recent, the opening of the courthouse library at Bosman Government Center. And this is a wonderful suite of quotes from an artist in residence that we invited to come and help us celebrate 40 years of, or 60 years of the sit-ins that took place here in Arlington. And so our artist, Amos Kennedy Jr., who is a printer, loves typeface, and he did some research and found quotes representing each of the sit-in locations that took place here in the county. And there's a quote from each. And this project happened during COVID. So we invited folks to go out and collect a free handbill that he had done, a screen printing of the quote. And then when the project was done, we wanted something a little more permanent. So we commissioned him to do a portfolio of these same quotes, slightly larger on acid-free paper so that it would survive. And then we actually framed one here for the library. We showed this at the Shirlington Library prior to it going to Bosman. And we actually donated portfolios to the Library of Congress, the Arlington Historical Society, and the Black Heritage Museum of Arlington. So we wanted to make sure that these were part of their collections and part of this history is interpreted by an artist was available to more people. We've also installed some work, recent projects down here at 3700, our headquarters in Green Valley. So I mentioned that we have been doing artist in residence projects in affordable housing, and we recently completed a wonderful project with Asa Jackson, who is from Newport News area, and he came up and did a series of in-person residency workshops with mostly youth, as it turned out, at the Columbia Hills, Columbia Grove affordable housing projects off of Columbia Pike, and he created a beautiful quilt that was made from donated materials throughout, collected throughout the residences. And I see actually an image in the background of David Carlson's beautiful painting. And I know David is listening in today. So thank you, David, for your beautiful painting in the background. But in addition to your painting, we now have a quilt that was made by the community installed at Columbia Grove. I was talking a little bit with Louise earlier, our Q&A monitor. She said she came and made a special visit to see the reclining Liberty on the lawn of the Museum of Contemporary Art, Arlington. And it's a wonderful piece. This is actually probably more of a rendering and not the actual work. And I apologize for not having an image of it, especially on its inaugural day, where we had wonderful community surrounding it and crawling on top of it. But if you haven't come and taken your selfie in front of it, I strongly encourage you to do so. It has quite a presence on the lawn of MOCA Arlington. We also are scheduling a variety of lectures on the topics that Lady Liberty and Lady Liberty reclining in a more inviting pose might get one thinking about. So issues related to democracy, issues related to immigration. And so we hope to have programming coming forward, working with MOCA Arlington soon, happening really throughout the year. The piece will be on the lawn until June of next year. Speaking of monuments, we get a lot of inquiries and interest in a brand new project that has come to Metropolitan Park, which is the home of Amazon's second headquarters at Pentagon City. And Nikisha Durrett, the project that is the tall tower that you can see, created this 30-foot tall tower as a commemoration for the 903 individuals who were forcibly removed from their lands near the current day Pentagon. And this happened in 1941. Folks were marginally compensated, if at all, and moved out so that the Pentagon and the roadway associated with the Pentagon could be built. So this is a lesser known story and history, part of Arlington's history, that Nikisha, in being invited to create a piece for the park for Amazon, investigated further and decided to commemorate in her work. It's a very moving piece. I encourage you to visit it. You can enter it, and inside are a series of vessels, one representing each of the 903 folks who were relocated. And they were done by artists, ceramic artists, 17 different ceramic artists across the country. So it's very beautiful work and moving work. There were two other projects as part of the park there. So I encourage you to take a look. These are interactive and fun. So there are really only three of us doing this work, actually two right now. My colleague Tamora Wright, who would be on the call, but she's on leave today. And then we're currently hiring a new project manager. So hopefully we'll be three of us by the end of the year. But we are busy again with maintenance, commissioning new projects of all sorts. And then we do work collaboratively with colleagues across cultural affairs and the rest of the county. We have a role regionally. We have helped a number of programs throughout the region: Alexandria, Reston, Leesburg, Frederick, to formalize their programs. And we helped to start this regional public art network. And there are about 70 of us who are members. And so it's a robust group that we are helping to have been helping to co-lead over the years. As you can see, we serve in professional capacities of various sorts, from board members to panelists, presenters throughout the year. We're very engaged in the art community writ large in our region. So I wanted to go through some things that are coming up, things to look for here in our 40th anniversary year. We are working on a video which will answer frequently asked questions about our program. And this video will have wide distribution throughout the county, and all of the video monitors you see throughout county facilities. We also may have a display at the Museum of Contemporary Art, Arlington, and of course will be online. But just talking through some of our pieces and why we do what we do and what we do in general. And then I'm working on some writing, actually research and writing about the 40 years that Arlington's been creating public art. And of course, I inherited the program about 10 years after it started, or maybe even 15. I joined the county in 94, but I really wasn't paying attention to public art much until around 1998, 1999. There's a story to tell about the extraordinary vision that this community had in commissioning a very ambitious work of public art in Dark Star Park, and how that really laid the foundation for our policy and our general approach to public art, how we engage artists in our projects, the stewarding of a major work of art by Nancy Holt, which is considered nationally, if not internationally known. And then the legacy that this has set up for the future for thinking about public art and placemaking in Arlington. So we'll be working on some writing and some codification of what we've been doing here for 40 years. And then we hope to have, as I mentioned, a special event on our 40th anniversary, certainly a proclamation, which the board did for us at our 30th anniversary 10 years ago. And the Rosalind Bidd is a fantastic partner in planning special events. So we will do something special for next year. This project is up and visible. We just have not cut the ribbon on it yet. So we're waiting for Dominion to tell us it's all done and perfect. But it's located in Crystal City, Pentagon City. It's a redo of a substation across from Aurora Highlands Community Center and the fire station there. And it's a kind of an extraordinary vetting, a surface treatment around a substation that had to get a little bit bigger. And they wanted to work with an artist designer, in this case, Elena Manfredini, whose work enhances it both architecturally and artistically. And so I encourage you to take a look at that. And we'll have a ribbon cutting, hopefully, with Dominion next year. These projects also are temporarily, partially up. If you've been driving by North Glebe Road in Ballston, you may have had a peek. Olala Kanjeufis has done these dimensional murals that are part of the new Harris Teeter project in Ballston. So we hope to do a ribbon cutting for these in the spring. Wonderful story. So not everything we do is contemporary public art or contemporary art. We were involved working with the Historic Affairs folks, and we rescued some stained glass that at the time we thought was just attractive. We didn't really know its provenance or its value. And we were able to incorporate it in 3 different projects throughout the county. So if you visit Museum of Contemporary Art Arlington at the Old Morey School or the Fairlington Community Center and look up, there's a skylight. And then also at Westover Library, there's some stained glass that are fairly abstract, some floral design, looks very arts and craft, very much of its era, from about the 1920s, 30s. And there was also a religious piece that was salvaged. And, you know, we had to find the right partner. So it took us a while, but eventually working with the Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing and the Ballston Central United Methodist Church in Ballston, we are going to see the renovation of this religious element that was taken from the Abbey mausoleum. So I didn't explain that, but we salvaged all of the stained glass from a mausoleum that was being destroyed by the Navy after all the bodies were taken and redistributed, but they basically were expanding the area near the back of Arlington Cemetery. And as part of this, they offered any of the historic elements to the county. And so working with historic preservation, historic affairs, we removed some of the stained glass and actually a granite piece, which is in front of the Westover Library before it was demolished. And we didn't really know much about the stained glass, but we later found out that we found a signature that Louis Comfort Tiffany had in fact created these stained glass. So we were really thrilled to have that as part of our history and part of our collection, and are especially thrilled to have now found a home for the religious piece, which will be included in this new development, including the new home for the Ballston Central United Methodist Church in Ballston. This is something we will hope to see the ribbon cut on also early next year. Actually, I should also say there's some writing that we're doing about those 4 projects. And so that'll be something available next year too, because it is quite a lovely story. Speaking of lovely stories, those of you who frequent the courthouse area may be familiar with a sculpture that has been in the traffic median here for over 50 years. It was a gift of the JCs in 1969. It's called Compassion. It was created by the artist Una Hanbury. And with some redevelopment that's happening in this area, this traffic island had to be redesigned, basically demolished. And so we've been working with the developer Graystar, who are doing 2 projects in adjacency to here, the old Wendy's site and then the Landmark site. And they worked with a proposal that we had received from the grandson of Ms. Hanbury. He is a sculptor himself. She trained him. She gave him his tools. And he asked if he could recreate the sculpture. Now, this is not something we typically do. Normally, we would have tried to save and restore the sculpture, but we had a couple of conservators look at the sculpture and they were worried. You can sort of see the cracking in this image. We were worried that lifting it out of place would cause it to be damaged. The developer was able to remove it, but the cost of having it redone was cost prohibitive for the developer. And so we had this proposal, fairly unusual proposal from the grandson to scan it digitally and to recreate it in bronze. And so that's what he has done. The sculpture is ready to be relocated as soon as the traffic island is completed. And we hope to have a ribbon cutting on that before the end of the year. So stay tuned. Another project I mentioned we're working on with Kip Kobayashi and also Lynn Myers, who created the privacy screening that's still visible on the 3rd floor at Bosman, just outside of the county board office. Lynn and Kip are collaborating. Lynn will be creating more privacy screening for the conference rooms that are right as you walk in, the east end of Bosman Government Center. And Kip will be creating a suspended sculpture in that space. So this was something that was planned as part of the renovation. We're just kind of coming in on the tail end of that, waiting till all the dust settled before the artwork goes in. And that should be sometime about a year from now. I mentioned that there was a companion bridge with the one we recently dedicated at West Glebe Road, also by the artist Vicki Scurry. You can see she's taken a different pattern here. But this just gives you a sense that it's in design development, so we don't have any images of the completed work, but be on the lookout for it sometime in 2025. We have installed the first phase of shelters enhanced, their roofs were enhanced with a design that was done by the artist Spencer Finch, who was given a list of color memories that we engage the community to tell us about as it relates to Columbia Pike. And Spencer came up with a palette of colors based on community input. And for the entire 3-mile stretch of Columbia Pike, after all of these shelters are installed, we will see the changing of the seasons. So this color palette will shift gradually from one season to the next. Very subtle but beautiful concept that will help to unify all 23 shelters along Columbia Pike. And the first 8 towards the west end of Columbia Pike have already been installed, but there are more to come over the next few years. We don't exactly know when or what, but Penn Place, the other portion of the campus of HQ2 for Amazon, is in its planning phase still, and we will have public art there as well. Certainly as grand, I'm sure, and exciting as what they provided for Metropolitan Park. And then speaking of bus shelters, we're also going to be working to expand the shelters that are already out in the public from Potomac Yard through Crystal City, going north to Crystal City, and then heading west to Pentagon City. The same artist, Barbara Bernstein, will be creating new designs for those shelters, again, coming forward in the next several years. I mentioned collection maintenance, and this is another nice view, a different view of Dark Star Park. This was actually right when it was installed, so it's an old view. You can see the trees, which are now fully mature, were just saplings then. But we are working to restore the park to its former glory. It's a slow process. The slip lane that is just near the bottom portion of the park is actually the north portion, and there's a slip lane that's been taken out of service in the last few years, and that actually will be incorporated into the park. So when that happens and our transportation planning folks do that work, we'll also be working to make sure that the park gets a facelift, which is something that we did back in 2002. And I worked with the artist Nancy Holt to plan that. This time, unfortunately, Nancy is no longer with us, but we will attempt to carry her spirit and wishes forward, working with the foundation she created, the Holt-Smithson Foundation. So unfortunately, that is a few years away, but we'll be in the planning stages of that for the next few years. And then there's a list of projects that we recently, through the capital improvement program, were able to hire a conservator to come and look at all 80 pieces and all of our portable works as well, about 150 of those framed artworks. And she had a list of recommendations, and her top of her list was this list of artworks that need some sort of maintenance, conservation. Some of them are owned by private developers, and so our job is to prompt the developer to care for the work of art that they themselves own. And in other cases, these are projects that the county will be working on improving and maintaining for years to come. So that takes us to about the end of my presentation. I wanted to just share with you some images of public art. This is, I mentioned, Vicki Scurry's project on Arlington Boulevard. Sometimes people don't know what all is out there that we consider public art. So we created this slideshow. Is it visible? I just want to make sure that it's playing and visible. Can somebody give me this? Okay, excellent. We created this slideshow just to give you a sense of the breadth of what's out there. And again, this is all listed on our website. Again, through a really nice interactive map feature that one of my colleagues worked very hard on making happen when we updated our website. So I'm happy to take folks there if they'd like to see that. or just take questions.
Angela, it's Louise. Well, thank you, first of all, for an outstanding presentation, really. I'm an Alexandrian, so I'm always looking for what's happening over in Arlington to broaden my world. So thank you very much. And I wanted to comment on the bridge, because I didn't think of it as a public work of art, but when I saw it, I go, wow, they're really making bridges a lot nicer than they used to. And I also look at it every time I go and I think, wow, that's just great. So thank you. And thank you for all your work over many years on public work. We do have a few questions, so let me pose them to you. Lynn Jordan asks, is there any preference for public artworks given to artists, designers, installation contractors, etc., who are based in Arlington County or Virginia?
No, our purchasing regulations wouldn't allow us to do that. And, you know, in the words of my boss, Michelle Isabel Stark, we wouldn't want to restrict an Arlingtonian's ability to work in other communities by not allowing other artists to come and work in our community. So I think the idea is that you want to match the right artist for the job. It is a skill set that not every artist possesses. We have about half of our collection is our regional artists from the DMV, as we like to say, and about half are from outside. Somebody like Vicky Scurry brought with her the expertise to work in a DOT project. So she'd worked with DOTs in Kansas and Texas and Washington State, and it was actually the first project that our VDOT worked on, and they didn't know how to work with an artist, whereas she was able to teach them how it's done. So in some cases, you know, you want that expertise and you have to look elsewhere for it.
Gotcha. Thank you. David Carlson asked the question, what did the name Dark Star come from for artist Nancy Holt's Dark Star Park?
Yeah.
By the way, where is that? Maybe.
Okay. So
it
is, yes, I will, maybe after this is done, jump to the website, but it's actually located in Roslyn. It's on the southern tip of Roslyn, just before you get to, would cross Arlington Boulevard or Route 50 to get to Iwo Jima, the Marine Corps Memorial. And so it really marks an entranceway into Arlington from the south. And Dark Star, she likened these orbs to fallen stars. This is the inside of Queen City I was talking about. But she likened them to just fallen stars, extinguished stars, and that's where it gets its name. Now, there's lore associated with this, which is kind of fun to share. August 1st is also the birthday of the Grateful Dead band's leader, Jerry Garcia. So there was some suspicion that, and they have a song called Dark Star, that there was some reference to the Grateful Dead. I think when I asked Nancy about it, she kind of chortled and she said, that's great that people, you know, have made that association, but that wasn't really part of the plan. So for her, I think she was thinking of connecting land and sky and the idea of something falling from the sky to create this sculptural element. For her, took the form of an extinguished star.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Katie Wittenberg asked, have you thought of offering a bus tour of Arlington's public art?
Yes, we did it 10 years ago. And there was 2 tours. There's so many projects. So we have booklets. They're also on our website. They are in the process of being updated. And they each take about 3 or 4 hours. So there's a lot to see, and that would be even more now because that was 10 years ago. What we are doing is we're going to break down those booklets into neighborhoods and do tours for each neighborhood and incorporate that into the new Stay Arlington website. So our colleagues in the convention and visitor and convention services in economic development have a wonderful website that show sort of all the richness of Arlington, and they break it down by neighborhoods, and we're going to add public art tours there. They'll also be on our website. But if anybody wants a tour now, it's on the website, or you can let me know and we'll send you the pair of booklets.
But that would be self-guided. You did.
That's self-guided. Yes, we did.
I think maybe
we
yeah.
have done tours. I will tell you, it's probably a little ambitious for us at this point. I don't know who would have the fortitude. It would take an entire day. I don't know how we would do it in this day and age. I'll be frank. There's just too much to see. What we have done is we've done bike tours. So Bike Arlington did a tour of Green Valley and Columbia Pike last year. And then this year, a tour around Virginia Square, Clarendon Courthouse, Ballston. We participated, Tamora and I, in that. So we'll come out and do these in areas. We do Roslyn a lot. There's a self-guided one in Roslyn. Sometimes we'll redo the Roslyn one with a walking with a guide. It's just, I don't know how you would do the whole collection. So we may when we do these neighborhood tours, I think do tours with the launch of each of those. That's a good idea. So
well, maybe we can somehow partner with Encore Learning, and maybe there's
well, if you guys want to do, if you really have the fortitude to do a full day, I'd be happy to lead it.
Well, thank you. Laura's listening in, so we'll have a further discussion about it. Were there any plans or installations of public art that received negative or controversial feedback? Lynn Jordan asked that.
You know, I'm trying to think. I think it's almost the ones that I think didn't make it off the drawing board.
Okay.
I think is the best way to answer that. We did a very ambitious plan for the water pollution control plant renovation about 20 years ago with the artist Mary Miss, who's a well-known land artist. And it was just too ambitious for the county. So it didn't make it to final realization. And there are probably several that are like that, but nothing that was put up that somebody said, we can't live with this. I mean, we've tried some more unusual things in a temporary format, maybe, but nothing anyone's complained about that I can remember.
Okay, thank you. Laura, did you have a comment on this question? No? Okay. Esther Williams asked, do buildings about to be demolished or emptied, have they notified you as to whether you want any of their significant holdings, such as the Tiffany windows that you alluded to?
You know, that's a tricky one. Section 106, federal section 106, I don't know any more about it than that. If something is of historic prominence, they have to notify the local historic preservation office that it's going to be demolished. It may just be federal demolition. Okay. And that would be the only way that we, the county, would know. I would say that our historic preservation staff is very proactive, however, in preservation and in this type of work because of the Tiffany window project that we did with them. So I think they're constantly aware of things like that. But if it's private sector and private property, this is a land rights state, and we don't tend to get involved much unless someone has notified us or we that they themselves have asked the owner, you know, to not destroy the property, you know, without thinking about what could be salvaged.
Okay, thank you. Jack Royer asked, what's the story on the dancers on Wilson in Roslyn?
Okay, so let me try a new share and see if I can show you guys how to go. our collection. Can you see this permanent collection?
Yes, we see the map.
Okay, okay, and the map. Okay. So browsing the collection, I'll just go down to Anna and David, the dancers. It'll tell you a little bit about Anna and David, and I'll tell you a little bit more that I know about Anna and David. So this was commissioned by Joey Kempfer, a developer who actually did the building at Dark Star Park, behind Dark Star Park, and helped to fund that project. Joey became very interested in art as a result of working with Nancy Holt in the county on Dark Star Park. He started buying art. He was very interested in the work of Miriam Shapiro. He owned a painting, I believe, of this image, and he asked if the artist would consider making a large-scale sculptural rendition of the figures in the painting. And so she did. And that's what's there. It's in need of conservation, so it's on our list. If you take a closer look, this image does not draw attention to that, but we're on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Gail, yes? Does somebody want to chime in on that? Laura, maybe? No? Okay. What is the name of the bronze male bust located at 1525 Wilson Boulevard? Excuse me.
That's a good question. That's by Ray Cass. I don't think it's in our collection because it didn't come through the site plan process. I believe it is an image of, it's a mythological figure. Ray was working on the Portlandia sculpture roughly at that time for Portland, Oregon. Ray was a figurative artist, may still be around. I'm not sure, but it's a bust from a sculpture, another sculpture, or a head from another sculpture he was working on. I don't know. I don't remember the details, but I could find out. I'll make a note.
Okay. Yes, please let us know then, because
Okay.
I
will.
newsletter.
I will.
Peggy Alpern. Actually, Lynn Jordan has chimed in again and said, art tours by neighborhood sounds like a great project for neighborhood organizations and art students from local universities.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah, I think if we codify them, break it down a little bit so it's not so 80 works all day kind of thing. Once we have that breakdown, I think you're right. I think it'd be very easy for individuals to help us lead, get the word out about.
Okay. Peggy Halpern asks, for the type of job you have, what type of education do people seek?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I came at this, I think, as Laura mentioned, my training is in art history. I worked in museums, and then in regional art centers. And then I had a career as an independent curator for a while. When I came to the county, I was asked to direct a gallery that we don't have any longer. And then my boss at the time, our division chief, was really interested in getting on the map with public art and knew about, of course, Dark Star Park, but wanted to figure out how to make more of public art happen. And so she asked me if I'd be willing to work with her on that. And so then that became a full-time job. However, one of the skills or the skill sets that I've been wishing I had was trained in, certainly architecture, landscape design, urban, anything in the urban design toolbox where you're reading plans, understanding topography, elevations of buildings, structure, how to build something, engineering, any of those skills, any of those fields play a role in the work of public art as we define it. There are programs that are more mural-based, more temporary-based, more conceptual-based. But our work tends to be more physical and incorporated into these larger facilities. So I have had to learn how to read plans. I have learned how to work with architects, engineers, landscape architects. And so the skill set really that one needs is probably more than any one individual has. which lends itself to collaboration. So I'd say if you have any of those skill sets and know how to work collaboratively with others, you probably have what you need to do public art.
Yeah. Marcy asks, is parking available near all or most of the sites?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I drive around the county still. I sometimes bike and take the bus as well, but I can't envision, I mean, there are certain areas that are more crowded than others, but absolutely, I think you could probably park to see almost everything here.
Gail Lehman asked, is there a list of all of the murals on your website?
So we don't have a ton of murals, but I'll just go to the website here while I'm here, Public Art Collection. So I would go under, we generally tend to call, well, it depends. Some are temporary and some are permanent. So the one we did recently on Langston Boulevard might be in our permanent collection. So we don't separate out murals. We just have all the different types. Here's a scene of Roslyn. This is a David Chung project at, actually an older project, one of the early ones, installed at the Roslyn Metro. So no, they're all mixed in.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And David Carlson asked, could you talk about Alberto's strips that created a moving soundtrack? There are people who loved it and people who had difficulty getting their heads around it.
Yes. So what David's asking about, David was a former arts commissioner and member of our public art committee. I'm scrolling down because we're in the process of updating our temporary projects. We don't have everything listed. So here's the Langston mural that I was mentioning. So that's under temporary. We tend to think of murals as temporary here. They aren't always. The one that I showed you that David Chung had done for Roslyn was made with a German material called Keim paint, which is a mineral-based paint. It's like 100-year paint. It binds with the surface. So it's considered permanent. So loci, that's the project that David is referencing. So here's the artist, Alberto Gaitan, in a car going over one of those rubber tubes that we see when they're doing traffic counts in areas. He did a percussive installation of these along Lorckham Lane, which was up for a short period of time, as you can see, about a month in the summer of 1998. There's about 33 of these tubes. And yeah, as you drove over it percussed and you had an experience in your car. And yeah, some people didn't appreciate if it's their daily drive twice a day to and from work, being forced to drive over a public art project. But again, this is the type of thing that we knew wasn't going to be up for very long. And it's the kind of thing people are still talking about, however many years later.
I had a question that I wanted to ask you. You talked about cooperation with neighboring towns. You know, I live in Alexandria. What kinds of collaborations do you do?
Well, I mean, in the case of public art, they tend to be multi-jurisdictional at our edges, right? With Alexandria, or Falls Church, or Fairfax. Or DC, I guess you could consider, but the river does cut us off. A lot of what we've done has, in partnership, we've done some presenting where an artist might be in both locales, where we've presented the artist. And we've also talked more about doing this than we've done it because of the complexity of where do you host it? And do people, is it a movable feast? Do people go back and forth? We have done some programming where an artist was in both locations. We certainly trade a lot of advice. We cheer each other on. We share consultants. And so sometimes information is shared in that form. Lake Olalekan Geophis is the project here that's illustrated that I said is coming or is really partially installed at the Harris Teeter in Ballston. He did one of the projects at the King Street Wharf a couple years ago during COVID. And so I think we probably knew about him from that project.
Okay.
So that kind of thing.
Okay. Okay. Kind of more informal, but you know,
Yes.
you each know what you're doing and
Yes.
benefit from it.
And again, when it's a bridge that crosses both, you know, we come together. So
Good. Well, this is just great. This was just great. So it makes me want to download that list and break the 80 into 20 at a time or something. And
I think that's what's needed. Yeah.
I think that's what's needed. But everybody, thank you for being here today. We would ask you as one last thing before you leave, can you go in the chat and tell us what your favorite piece of outdoor art is? Angela was interested in that, and we are too. So it'd be kind of fun to see where the favorites are. It's kind of informal market research here. So thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you at our next Encore Learning special event. Thank you, everybody. And great. Thank you very much, Angela. This is just great.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So don't leave yet until you contribute. Are things coming through on chat? I don't see chat here.
Just one. We may have lost folks. Somebody said Dark Star Park. Somebody said Fifi, which is in Pentagon City. The unnamed male bronze bust and the bridge art. Columbia Pike, the Donald Lipsky, the Pike, Quarter of Light pylons, Air Force Memorial, actually, which isn't public art, although one of our county managers said that he was going to count it as public art back in the day when it was created. The dancers on Wilson, please keep it. Yes, we actually have fought to keep it, believe it or not, and we're now going to get it conserved, hopefully working with the owner and developer.
Great.
So, yeah. Good
so
list.
well, clearly everybody was interested. You know, we had some good questions, and it's a very interesting topic. And then one of the things I like is it's an intellectual topic, but it's also very relatable. You know, this is daily life in Arlington, so it's just great. And people are contributing, by the way. They're continuing to contribute.
It's great. Yeah, it's really great. It's really, I think, the most democratic of art forms. And my boss Michelle Isabel Stark mentions that a lot. It's out there for everyone to enjoy. So
it is. Okay, I think we'll hold off on closing it a little bit because people are still contributing.
Great.
On chat, I guess this is. So let's just hold it for a little bit.